Good evening, good evening. Come on in the room. Please stay when you see. Sorry to disappoint you all as you're tuning in on this evening and you realize that it is not the master teacher, Dr. McCoy, but it's me, her lesser stand-in. But I invite you all to join me this evening. Nevertheless, promise you I'm not going to hold you long, and I mean it today. Hey, as you all are coming in, I want to share a couple of things with you. I want to remind you, for those of you who find it not robbery, to join us tomorrow morning at 6:30 for our midweek prayer call. Join us, please, sir. Please, ma'am, if you will, for that on today. I want to thank my special guest for tuning in. For those of you that may hear him in the background, no other than my illustrious friend, Blue. He hears his master's voice and wants to greet me and greet you all on this evening. Come on in the room, if you will. If you will, tap the share button on your devices on the day, and let's spread the good news of the gospel on this evening as we engage with one another yet again in Tuesday night teaching. I know it's been a while since we've been on. You all have had a month off to respite, to rest yourselves, to relax, to unwind, to do whatever it is that you do. And when you're not tuning in on Tuesday, I pray that you all are blessed, to had a blessed time, enjoyed yourselves in whatever it was that you were doing. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and start because, again, as I shared with you all, I plan on ending early on this evening. If I can't teach as good as Dr. McCoy, at least I can pull off a couple of tricks and dismiss a little bit early. That's the only thing that I can do to make this memorable for you all on this evening. Hey, for those that tune in on Sunday, as we commenced our new sermon series called we're going to dive back into that same pericope today, dig a little bit deeper. Want to solicit your questions, your comments, your concerns. Let's share with one another freely. You know how I do it. I say I'm here to merely facilitate a discussion between us on this evening. So let's go back, if you will, to the Old Testament book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible, Exodus chapter number 3. I want us again to focus our attention on those first. We're going to focus our attention on this evening on the first 8 verses of Exodus chapter 3. I'm reading it again from the New International Version. But before I do, let us pray. Heavenly God, our Father, we thank you, Lord, for your love, your grace, your mercy, your wisdom, your foresight, Lord, your compassion, Lord, for just you being God. We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity for us to gather together in this sacred place. Pray that you bless us, Lord, as we strive to continue to study, to show ourselves approved, work people rightly, dividing the word of truth. Lord, what I'm simply trying to say, Lord, is have your way, Lord, not only in this worship experience right now, Lord, but in us. Lord, you be the God, and Lord, and allow us to follow, allow us to submit to your will, to your way, and to your word. Well, this is your servant's prayer that we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. Exodus chapter number 3, again, the first 8 verses of that particular pericope. I'm reading it from the New International Version. There you will find these words. It says, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I would go over and see this strange sight while the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers. I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Amen. I want to continue our discussion. I want to rather continue the thought that from on this past Sunday, as we have a discussion on this evening, if you will, about our calling. I want us to take a very look at the life of Moses here in this pericope, and how Moses' calling, hopefully it will shed some light, illuminate a couple of things in our lives that will allow us to be reflective and contemplative on our own callings. First of all, as we look at Moses, as we shed light on Moses, this calling of God upon Moses' life, I want to again provide a little bit of historical narrative for us as we begin this discussion. And look, in Moses' life, y'all, can be divided into three sections. If we really look at his life, put his life underneath the microscope, we can divide it, we can dissect it, if you will, into three sections. The first 40 years of Moses' life is spent learning in Egypt. I'm going there. Put a pin there. We're coming back to that. The next 40 years of Moses' life is spent learning in Midian, caring for sheep. And finally, y'all, the last 40 years of Moses' life was spent in the wilderness. So he both failed and he was successful in each phase of his life, in all three places. But here's the key. God was preparing Moses in each phase. Let us first look at the first 40 years of his life that he spent learning in Egypt. Many of us, when we consider the life of Moses, we want to automatically assume, we tend to automatically assume and go to the burning bush experience, which I preached about on Sunday, and we even continue the discussion on today. We look at that as the beginning of Moses's ministry, of Moses's calling. But if you go all the way back, remember, even Moses' calling actually took place when he was born, because Pharaoh realized he had gotten word that an ebony emancipator was going to be born to free the Israelites rather from Egyptian bondage. So Pharaoh issued a decree to kill all of the male newborns. But Moses' mother was a wise lady. She knew the calling that God had placed on her son's life. You know, those of you that have been Bible studied, that's been in Sunday school, you know that she stole away to the river. She placed her baby on the river and allowed him to sail down the river, and he would eventually be discovered by Pharaoh's daughter. And he was raised in Pharaoh's household. But here's the trip part about it. His mother would served as the midwife, as his nurturer. So look how God began to orchestrate that thing, even at Moses's birth. How he orchestrated Moses, how he preserved Moses' life, how he allowed the very one that was out to destroy him to be the very one that ended up contributing to his development in that first phase of his life. So he learned in Egypt. He learned from the very ones that he had received the calling to liberate his people from. So that's the first part. The second phase of his life, again, he learned in Midian, and that's where, y'all, he learned how to really lead. Because again, he learned in Midian caring for his father-in-law's, Jethro's sheep on the backside of the mountain. That's where he was able to really learn how to lead. And if you really study sheep, y'all, and I pray that you will in your free time, if you get a chance, I want you to do a study on sheep. Sheep are oftentimes credited as being very stubborn, as being very let me just cut through the field, very dumb animals, which is why they need a shepherd to keep them herded, to guide them, to keep them from wandering off and getting caught up in the thicket, to keep them from wandering off and allowing predators to come upon them and prey upon them. So the shepherd is there to keep the flock reined in, to keep them from going astray, to give them guidance, to give them leadership, to give them also nurturing, to nurture them, to admonish them when they need to be admonished. That's all that sheep or that shepherds rather do with the flock that they tend to. So that's the second part of Moses's development. And there in Midian, he was developed as a leader, and then of course the wilderness experience. It's the third part. But y'all, the burning bush experience is notable for us. It's a notable event where Moses is confronted by the presence of God. And y'all, and this is where we see God's call for him to be a leader. Now, although that this is where we visibly see that calling, again, I would suggest, and even some scholars would even suggest, that the calling upon his life existed at birth. So I think it's very important that we don't just gloss over that and realize that even for many of us, we assume oftentimes that we aren't prepared for the calling on our lives because we don't have all of the prerequisites that's required for us to operate fully in the calling. But I would suggest for us on this evening, and here's what I want us to camp out for just a few minutes, y'all. And I want y'all to begin to give me some comment, to give me some feedback on this thing. Let's have a discussion. Let's be honest, and let's be transparent with one another. Because again, I truly believe that transparency helps us all grow. So it's truth be told, none of us are fully prepared when we receive the calling from the Lord. That's why he calls us. He calls us because he equips us in preparation for being able to walk in the calling that is on our life. Because this truth be told, for many of us, if we already had everything that it took for the calling that he's placed in our lives, the minute that we begin to operate in it, the minute we'll begin to want to pat ourselves on the back, give ourselves credit, write our own headlines and our own narratives about how good and great we are, because we have the tendency to want to stick our chest out, hold our heads up in the air, and prayerfully it don't rain, because many of us oftentimes would drown if it did, because our nose is so high up in the air. So the question I have for us on this evening, the first question that I have for us on this evening is simply this. I want to phrase this question this way. What is the biggest barrier? What was or what is, depending on what stage of life you're in, what was or is the biggest barrier in your life that hindered you from beginning to operate in your calling? Did y'all hear what I just said? I said, what was, if you've already, overcome that barrier, or what is, if you're still struggling with it. The biggest barrier in your life that is preventing you from fully operating in your calling. That's the question. I've put it out there. Now let me hear from you all. And while I'm waiting on your responses, good evening, Mom. Good evening, Sister Scott, and good evening to those others of you that are tuned in. But I want to solicit your comments, your feedback on that first question for us on this evening. What was is your biggest barrier into operating in the calling in your life, in the calling that God has on your life, rather? What was the biggest, or what is the biggest barrier? Anyone care to share with us as it relates to that question? Thank you, Sister Bridget. Bridget says, feeling like I didn't have the knowledge. Awesome. That's an awesome response. Awesome response. Hey, good evening. Good evening, Dad. Thank you, Mom, for notifying me that he's also tuned in with you watching. Anyone else care to share with us what was the biggest, or what is the biggest barrier to you operating in the calling that God has placed in your life? Oftentimes we say the calling that he's placed over our life. I'm going to suggest it's the calling that he's placed in our lives. What's been, or what is the biggest barrier or challenge for you? Anyone else care to share with us? There's no right or wrong answer, because hey, whatever barrier it is or was for you, it is or was your barrier. No one can dispute that. No one can dismiss that, because it is what it is. Good evening, Sister Wells. Thank you all for tuning in. For those that's just coming into the room, the question that I posed for us on this evening, for us to share, for us to continue to dig into a little bit deeper, is what is or was the biggest barrier in your life with regard, as it relates to the calling that God has in your life? Make sense? Or do I need to make it more plain? What is or was the biggest barrier for you? Bridget says it was feeling like she didn't have the knowledge. Anyone else care to share? And again, let me throw this out there for you all. I've really have honed my skill of the use of silence and active listening. Study says that one of the best, one of the greatest ways to practice active listening is through the use of silence. So y'all, I'm getting more and more comfortable with the use of silence. So I'm going to begin to practice it now as I wait for some more comments as it relates to that first question, because we can't go to the next question without first receiving adequate input to the first question. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Kim Lu White. Welcome. Anyone else going to share with us? For those that's tuning in, no, it's not that I'm not prepared and don't know what to say, but you may have joined after I share it with everyone that I'm practicing my active listening skills right now through the usage of silence to solicit someone's input, feedback to the first question that I have put out there on the table for us all, which is again, the third time or fourth time, however many times that I have repeated the question now. The question is, what was or is your greatest barrier to accepting God's call in your life? Waiting for one more response because I know Bridget is feeling like she's out there on an island by herself, by being the only one to share with everyone that's tuned in on this evening what her barrier is. So I refuse to allow her to have her Patmos Island experience by being alone. So someone, please join in with Bridget by sharing with us what was or is your barrier.
Barrier for what?
Operating fully up and in accepting God's call in your life. Had a question posed to me as barrier for what? So there again, for clarification, that barrier is or was what hindered you from operating in that calling, or is hindering you. Hey, y'all, I plan on being off of here by 7:45. So we've got about 21 more minutes. And if I have to spend the next 18 minutes sitting here waiting, I am. Because here's where I'm at. I shared this with the prayer group, and I'm waiting on that response from that second individual. I shared this with the prayer group on last week. And this is something that the Lord has really impregnated me with, has really placed on my mind, my heart, and really birthed this sermon series that we're engaged in right now. I truly believe one of the greatest hindrance from us being able to receive the blessings of God is because, how can I put it? Well, I'm gonna put it as plain as I can. It's because we're always going to God with an empty bag, expecting him to fill it with whatever it is that we're seeking, we're desiring of him. And I truly believe that God is like any other loving, any other loving father. He oftentimes wants us to just come to him and just shower him. Sometimes with just our love and our affection, share with him just how good he's been to us, to boast and brag to him how much we love and adore him and appreciate him. And I truly believe that one of the ways that we do that is begin to share with one another of just how truly much and how good he is, how much he's blessing us, how much he's doing for us. And one of the things that I think that we do, especially in this season of time that we're in right now, because everybody, we're all tuning in for the most part, online formats to services, and we're getting stuff, we're being fed however way. Oftentimes, if I can really be transparent with you, I feel like a fish in an aquarium. Oftentimes, and it's like I'm sitting here and it seems like everyone is just tuning in just to watch me. And as I'm sharing time and time again, what I really truly believe and what my desire for us to do is for us to have a conversation, a discussion with one another about just how good the Lord is, to share our story with one another. Let somebody know, because there's someone that's tuned in right now who truly is seeking a sense of hope, truly seeking a sense of love. And you just may be the one. You just may be the catalyst to share something with them that can touch them, meet them where they are, and encourage them to continue to strive and press on toward the Lord desires them to be. Can I be open? Can I keep it a buck with y'all? I can sit here and talk about how good the Lord is all day long, but that person may not receive what I'm saying as much, because they may be thinking that, well, the preacher's supposed to be saying that. Because I would be a poor preacher if I didn't. So there's someone right here that's tuned in right now. You've got a story to share about what that barrier was that hindered you, or what it may even be that's hindering you. And by you sitting on that story, that testimony right now, you just don't know who you may be withholding a blessing from. Not just you, but somebody else. But I'm done with that, because again, we only got 18 more good minutes, and I'll be out of y'all way, and y'all have Dr. McCoy back on here next week to fill y'all up with word and give you a good word. But I just believe it's just me, y'all. Ain't nobody that's tuned in right here. I know I got a couple of shoppers. You don't go up in Macy's, or you don't go up in Dillard's or JCPenney, or whatever your favorite store is. You don't go up in there and just pick up what you want and walk out the store, do you? But in order for you to walk out that store with what you want, you got to do what? You got to give something in return for it. Come here, y'all. Somebody, again, you thought you were tuning in to be blessed, but you just may have been tuned in and have that question posed to you for you to answer it and you to bless somebody. And that just may free you up so that you can fully begin to operate in that calling that the Lord has placed in your life. I'm through. I'm done. I'm off my soapbox now. I'm still waiting on that second person to respond. And I pray that you will, that God will go ahead and loose your tongue and let it go so that you can use it, so you can share that testimony, so that I can share it for these last 16 minutes that we now have. Thank you, Mama. Thank you. So Mama said, for me, it's her lack of resources for her because of her eyesight. She need more audio materials. She loves to read, and she can't sometimes. Amen. So thank you, Sister Bridget, for thank you both for sharing what they have been. But here's the thing that I sense in both of those responses, and that Moses can even agree with you all about as well. Here's what it was for Moses, and here's what I'm hearing in each of your responses. For Moses, he felt inadequate, which again, inadequate. Bridget's response was she didn't have the knowledge, which would also be a sense of inadequate if you feel as if you don't have all of the knowledge for it. For Mom, it was inadequate. It could be the sense of because her sight has depreciated some, and she's not able to see as good and be able to enjoy her love of reading as much now, that she feels as if it's kind of hindering her in that sense. Moses also felt as if he was unable to accomplish God's mission. And probably, y'all, he probably was even a little fearful of the Egyptians. So he felt inadequate. He had a sense of hesitancy whether or not he would be able to accomplish the mission. And there's probably some fear. There was some fear factor there as well of the Egyptians, because remember, he was a fugitive from justice. He was on the run. He had been on the run for 40 years after committing the capital offense of murder. So neither of you in your responses was to that extent. But again, there was a sense of inadequate. There was a sense. I sense here rather through your comments that each of you have typed a sense of fear of whether or not you're able to accomplish that mission, that task, or whatever it is that the Lord has placed on you. And guess what? Not only can Moses relate to you, but I can too. I mean, and I would even suggest that everyone that's tuned in, those of us who've been able to have discovered your calling and began to operate in it, your number one barrier was the sense of inadequacy, of not being equipped which goes back to the first point that I made. He doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. There's a big difference. For the reason I stay to without for the sake of redundancy, not wanting to repeat it again. So thank you too for that. Here's my follow-up question I want to put to that. But first, let me go to the next point, because I'm only going to be able to get 2 points done on this evening. Because again, I promise you, we're signing off. I'm signing off at 45 after the hour. Normal routine, y'all, had set in for Moses. He now has a new responsibility, and it further raises his sense of inadequacy. It was cool, copacetic. He knew every day what his responsibilities was. Get up, have breakfast, go out to the flock, go out to the fields to tend the flock, tend to the sheep, tend to the flock, come back, repeat, rewind, best play again. And that was all he did. He had a sense, he had a routine, a normalized daily routine in life. But here he is, his responsibility is being raised. He's asked to do something that he is not accustomed to doing in his mind. But stay with me, we're going somewhere and we're going to get there in a hurry. So he points to the absence of him having a speaking gift, not being well versed, and that he needed tools to lead. He points to his stammering tongue, that fact that he stuttered when he talked, and God said, don't worry. I ain't worried about that. But here's the key. And here's what I just said a few minutes ago that I want to raise. And then I want to ask y'all the second question. And I pray that we're going to get a lot of responses with this second question. So he says he pointed to not being very well versed, not being able to speak very well. But he did not give consideration to the task that the Lord was asking him to do. Yes, the Lord said, go to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. That was part of the assignment. But the main objective of the assignment was what? Okay, I'm going to cut across the field and give y'all the answer to that. The main objective of the assignment was for him to lead the Israelites out of Egyptian captivity. Just went over somebody's head. You just missed it. You just missed a major point. His assignment was to lead. What did I say he had been doing for the last 40 years since he had been in Midian? Thank you, Bridget. Leading. God had been equipping him for the assignment for the past 40 years. But because he viewed what he had been doing as mediocre, as unimportant, as menial, he didn't see the big picture. God had equipped him for the last 40 years. He had been learning to lead for the last 40 years. And now here it is. God has come to him through this bush, and God is promoting him from the classroom to the laboratory. God says you've been in the classroom you've been taking leadership 101, you've taken leadership 201, 301, and all of the advanced courses in leadership for the last 40 years. Now it's time to put it in practice. You've been putting it into practice with the sheep. But now it's time to put it to practice in the calling that I placed on your life, which is to lead my people. How many of us, here's the second question, and you got about 9 minutes to give me some good responses, and I'm logging off. Second question is, how many of us view our call when we really view our call underneath the microscope of our perception, oftentimes view ourselves as what Bridget and what Mama alluded to, of not being adequately equipped, not having the right credentials to fully operate in it. How many of us do that? That's a simple question. I ain't asking you to think. Doesn't call for a lot of contemplation and a lot of deep thought about. That question just simply calls for yes or no. Yes, that's me. I've oftentimes discounted the preparation process that the Lord has put me through for the calling that He has placed in my life. And because I've discounted the preparation process, it has hindered me from fully operating in it. Or until I realized that what He's had me doing for all this time has really made me suitable for the calling, now that He's finally revealed it to me. Hey, I thank y'all. I see the responses. Thank you. I knew that was gonna elicit some responses, because if the truth be told, all of us fall in that category. I shared a story with someone the other day. When I first accepted my calling into the ministry, I was, when I first, acknowledged my call, sat my family down and told them that I had acknowledged my call. I was fully prepared, y'all, at that time to walk away from my career, enroll in seminary. And my mindset, my focus was, I'm going to enroll in seminary and I'm going to go into pastoring full time. And so shortly after having the conversation about me accepting the call with my family, I sat down with my pastor, my father in the ministry, and I, sharing with him what my decision, what my goal was, what my plans was to do. Had already enrolled in seminary, and I was telling him, I'm going to matriculate through seminary, and as soon as I graduate, I'm leaving my job and I'm going pastor full time. And he shared something with me at the time that I thought was strange, but now as I look back on it in hindsight, all of these years later, I realized there was a lot of wisdom in what he shared with me. And here's what he shared with me, Sister Wells. He said, right, you may want to give thought to that. He said, because what you really are doing now, if you really look at it, is really ministry. And I couldn't see it then at the time, Mama. I was thinking, no, that ain't ministry. It's government work. I want to pastor full time. But now as I look back now and realize, and I see just the number of lives that the Lord has allowed me to navigate through, to connect with, the number of people that He's allowed me to connect with and just share things with them, share, nuggets of faith and hope with them through the years. It's helped me realize that this really has been a ministry. It really has been an extension of my calling. But, again, my perception at the time was I need to equip myself for the calling to pastor, to become an effective pastor, preacher. When really, y'all, the truth be told, if we really look at those things that we really have a passion, of love, and a natural love and tendency and inclination of doing, it's really connected to our calling. Would y'all agree with that? Yay or nay? All right, I'm waiting on y'all to get that. Let me give y'all this right here, because I'm down under 5 minutes. God solves y'all both of Moses' flaws, his speech, and so here's how he solves it. He gives Moses Aaron to speak and reminds Moses of his rod. See how God takes away our excuses? God calls us to do something, and we say, Lord, I can't do it because God takes away excuses. Because why? Going to what I said a few minutes ago. He equips the called. He don't call the equipped. He wants the vessel to be empty so he can fill it with what it needs to fully operate. So Moses' first excuse was, I got a stammering tongue. I stutter. I'm poor in speech. He said, don't worry. Take your brother Aaron with you. His elocution skills are on par. Here's my rod. You take it with you as well. Because the rod is going to be an extension of me for you to know that I'm there with you. Y'all hear me? Here's the last thing. He becomes God's instrument of power. So Moses is God's mouthpiece to the people of Israel, and he leads them out of slavery in Egypt. But he wasn't able to do it until he was able to accept the calling that the Lord has already placed in his life and begin to realize that he had already been operating. He had already been doing the very thing that God was calling him to do. The only difference was he was just being now elevated to the platform that the Lord wanted him to place him on to fully operate in it. Imagine what would have happened if instead of going out to tend to Jethro's sheep every morning like he had been asked to, like he had been commissioned to. Imagine what the situation would have been then. He would have allowed himself to be out of position to be equipped for the assignment that the Lord had already placed in his life from the day he was born, from the day that his mother placed him on the river, from the day that Pharaoh's daughter saw him drifting down the river, removed him and took him to the palace to raise him as her own. From the day that his mother, his birth mother, was able to get a position inside the palace and was to be placed in a position so that she can give her son that she had to give up for his life's sake, to give him the love, the nurture, the admonition, and all that those things that a mother, breathes into, places into their child's life. For him to also be able to have a sense of his culture, his heritage placed within him. So that day when he saw those Egyptians handling one of his fellow Israelites wrong, and he ran to his defense and ended up killing one of them in his defense, having to flee and being positioned in Midian to meet Jethro's daughter and marry her, to live in Jethro's house, to be given the assignment of tending to the sheep on the backside of a mountain in the middle of a desert, only to be called by God in that same desert, commissioned to go back to Egypt, liberate God's people, and bring them back into that desert where they're allowed to wander for 40 years, but he still stayed faithful and faithfully committed to the call that God has placed in his life. And yet here you are, griping about the calling that you sense God have on your life, and because it's not edged in big letters or on the marquee out front on Broadway or somewhere, you're thinking it's mediocre. But God says, I want you to do what you think is mediocre to the best of your ability, with the love and with the best of your efforts, and see. That's why he say, he who is faithful over a little, he will make ruler over much. God says, I want you to show me that you can cherish the little. So when I do give you much, you will cherish it. You will appreciate it just as much as you did when you had the little. He said, because I can't give you much if you still got a little mindset. He said, because if you got a little mindset and I give you much, you're going to take much and you're going to run it in the little. He said, but if you got a little mindset and you treat it like it's much, he said, when I give you much, you're only going to elevate it to be even more. That's all I came to share with y'all on this evening. And I know I'm 22 minutes over. I'm 22 seconds rather in overtime. God bless your heart. Thank you for tuning in. I pray that y'all have gotten something out of what I've shared with you on the day. Tune in tomorrow morning, 6:30, prayer call. I promise you, y'all, you're going to be blessed. Your rest of your week won't be the same. Tune in Sunday morning, part 2 of this multi-part series that we began on last week, on this series called. Y'all, I'm coming. I got a twist. I'm throwing a curveball at y'all this Sunday. You ain't going to see it coming, but I promise you, you're going to be blessed. Don't forget also, have your communion elements ready. We're partaking in the Lord's Supper with one another on this Sunday as well. Until we meet again, y'all be blessed. And hey, be sure to type in the comment section on next Tuesday when you tune in with Dr. McCoy, and let her know that, you know, I went too far off. I went too far away from the excellent teaching that she do. You know, I'm just trying to do what I'm trying to do. Till we meet again, be blessed. I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. Peace.